Hey guys, it's Chris from Drop Dice. So me and Havelock are back. He just really wanted a hug before I started this video, and he jumped up here as I was hitting the broadcast button. So we are back with world building this week, and what I wanted to talk about was factions and guilds and how to use them inside your world and make them living just like your world is. There's a couple minor tricks that I wanted to talk about. One of which is actually a trick I learned from Dungeon World. Let me put him down real quick. There you go, buddy. So one of them that I learned from Dungeon World is to use clocks. Essentially, they call it clocks in Apocalypse World. And Dungeon World does it by grim portents and threats. Essentially, each threat has a checklist of items that they try and complete to get their master plan going. So kind of a good example of this is, like, let's say your classic Bond villain. His checklist includes, putting hypnotic toxins inside the water supply that will give him mind control capabilities over the city. And that's like step one is acquiring those toxins, or at least the chemicals for those toxins. Step 2 is going to be mixing them. Step 3 is going to be getting them into the water supply. Step 4 is going to be waiting, basically. And then step 5 will be broadcasting a signal that causes all these hypnotic induced people to follow his ultimate command. So now I've got this list of items that he's going to do. So I've got 5 here. What I would do is I'd draw a circle and I'd break that down into 5 categories. And I know what each one of those little pies on my, or little slices of that pie chart that I made, are for me. So when my James Bond character comes along and defeats, my classic James Bond villain at gathering some of the chemicals, the clock itself is that's what the pie chart's sometimes called. It doesn't move forward because the hero stopped it. But let's say that the bad guy wins this scenario and he gets the chemicals he needs, or he finds other chemicals that he can work with and the players can't stop him. The pie chart moves forward 1 wedge, and then the players can have a chance to interact. And so if the players do nothing, the clock continues to go until it gets to fruition. And the way that you can do this is there's a couple different ways. You could do it whenever it feels right, or you could do it basically when an adventure is complete. That's kind of how Apocalypse World and Dungeon World kind of tell you to move forward with your threats, is when you feel comfortable. I like the idea of when it's complete. Blades in the Dark actually does this with their factions. It's a plus-minus system. And I actually really like the way Blades in the Dark is doing it, which that game is still finishing up its Kickstarter, and I'm really excited to get a hold of the book because I did back that one. Essentially, the way that their factions work are actually a little bit more in depth than just threats inside Dungeon World and Apocalypse World were done, which kind of leads me over to the idea of a living faction. Basically, if you were to do something for, let's say, faction A, and faction B is their rival, I may get points with faction B because I messed with faction A. Or I may be able to get myself a job with faction B attacking faction A. It's going to cause me to decrease points with faction A, but increase points with faction B. And there's always that dichotomy. And as you guys have seen through the video, I'm a big fan of player's choice having consequences, whether it's positive or negative. And if you have this dichotomy, or if you have a whole spider web full of factions, kind of like in the Blades in the Dark, where there's something like 16 factions inside there, all within the same city that are vying for territory, that, nothing you do is going to go without hurting somebody else or stepping on somebody else's toes. I think that's a really cool way to do it, and I think that Blades in the Dark really nails like how to do a faction criminal kind of element city urban adventure type game. So I'm interested to get my hands on the completed copy. I've got the beta test stuff. It's super cool if you get a chance to play it. But I wanted to bring up kind of those things that you can do. Now, I actually use clocks for everything on the map. So if I have like a world event that's about to happen, I'll put down a clock and I'll say, okay, it's going to take about, let's say, I'm going to make an eight section pie chart, and I'm going to have 3 of those. And ultimately, if that pie chart gets completely filled out, a volcano is blowing up. And that's just an event that I have planned for the world. And then when I do my end of session stuff, I get my players experience, and then all I have to do to prep for the next week, once my campaign's rolling, is adjust my clocks, plan out what next week's clocked things are supposed to be included, if the players will have any word of it right away, plan how that's going to come up in my next session, and then plan whatever the session adventure is. I mentioned in a video that I spend about 4 hours a week on prep. That's a lot of times because I'm thinking about how those clocks affect my campaign world. So if I have a couple different clocks going on, maybe I only focus on 30 minutes here, an hour there, just thinking about how this one clock affects the overall campaign session and what are the ramifications of having a volcano go off in this region, or maybe, you know, the Dr. Evil type character hypnotizing a large city. So that's why I said I do a little bit more prep, and it's totally not like solid 4 hours of prep. It's more like 30 minutes here, an hour there throughout the week. Whenever I'm not doing anything else, or just kind of like sitting down, not able to sleep at night sometimes. But I just kind of wanted to bring that to your attention. I think that's the easiest way for me to do Living Factions. Now, you guys know that I've been working on Providence. I'm going to do a couple videos where I talk a little bit about Providence, and one of the things that I'm going to do for Providence is actually work out factions. And I think I'm going to do them kind of similar to the way the Blades in the Dark is, where it's a list of factions, and it's a positive, negative thing, and that doing things can get you positive points or negative points with those factions. I don't think I'm going to take it to the extreme that Blades in the Dark does, but I'm going to have them out there, and they're going to be things that the players can take advantage of. But because they're not going to be an all-inclusive thing, kind of like they are in Blades in the Dark, if you just don't do anything with those factions, or maybe you did a lot of good stuff and then you just stopped working with that faction, I'm probably going to include a rule that that makes it to where your stuff resets back to 0 if you stop working with them for a while. Kind of like if you are a freelancer and you've been working for the same company for years, and then all of a sudden you just stop for 5 years and then you come back and try and work with them. It's like starting your relationship over again. So I want to have a sense of normality with these factions as well. And that's kind of what I'm thinking for Providence, to use this kind of topic for it. Now, I mentioned that I'm going to keep these videos short, but this one's going to go a little bit longer. Essentially, I wanted to throw out here that this is going to be the last World Building Wednesday video. I'm actually going to replace this series with a different series of videos, and I'm going to focus a little bit more on player tips that are going to be system agnostic. About how to build a character that matches a certain style, be able to capture a certain thing, use maybe some player class types or things like that that you maybe don't have the most experience with, and just kind of talk about like what different character concepts and things like that. It's going to be more focused towards player tips. I'm going to do that for a while. Now, if I do have any more world building tips or things that I want to put out, I am going to add to the world building series playlist, but I'm not going to make it an official Wednesday thing every week. My Saturday videos, however, I just found out that I've been hired. I may have to stop those entirely. I've been looking for a job, and many of you know that, for the past couple weeks, which has kind of hampered most of my social life, because when I'm looking for a job, I tend not to do anything else. So I've been a little bit slower on putting up videos and things like that. Now that I'm back to a normality in my schedule, I'll be putting out more videos, but unfortunately I will have to wait and see what my schedule is so that I can decide what my official posting schedule is going to be like. Now, I did L5R school, and people seem to really like that, so I'm going to continue those videos. And I should have another L5R school out this week. Probably talking about Void and how that works with your character, because I want to hit all those basics before we get super deep into like how to build a character, what play is like, what certain aspects of society are like, things like that. I also have some people that have been asking me for an L5R game, so I will do my best to try and make that happen so that I can have a different group on my channel doing a L5R 1, maybe 2-shot, depends on what I end up writing up. They pretty much wrote up their characters and have decided that they were going to continue to tell me and work on their characters until I finally caved and decided to run L5R. So I will most likely run for those guys. This is kind of my official video, and they can hold this against me because it has been recorded and posted to YouTube. All right, guys, that's pretty much all I've got at the moment. I'm also going to be doing a Copper Jackals campaign, and I'll be doing a ad for it coming up pretty soon once I get my work schedule sorted out and figure out when I can do that. And that's going to be a once-a-month campaign. It's going to be a dark fantasy, monster hunting, almost quasi like grim fairy tales kind of story, using the world of Dragon Grin. And that's actually going to go on my Copper Jackals playlist, which has only got 2 videos right now because I haven't had a lot of chance of doing some Copper Jackals stuff. And hopefully towards sometime this month, maybe the middle of the month, we will have our first episode of The Besieged, which will be really cool because I'll get to play and you guys will have me on a game that you can watch besides Lloyd's Viking game on a relatively regular basis. Once that starts coming up, be sure and check out those guys that are involved. They all have really solid channels. In fact, one of them, Locrius, put out another monster video today about the Dire Corby, which is this clawed crow-like thing. It's super cool. You should definitely check it out. It's on my Facebook. And I just released some more Provenance races, if you guys haven't caught up on those. And one of them is the Personal Helper Devices, or PHDs. They're little tiny robots. Definitely one of the more popular races, oddly enough. Everybody wants to be either the big bad warriors or the tiny little robots that are cool at engineering. I will be doing another post for Providence this week talking about their specialty that's racial to them. And then I will hopefully put out the human specialty, which I'm thinking is going to be like a explorer specialty, kind of giving them generic exploration type advantages and things like that. Well, that's really all I've got at the moment. As always, guys, feel free to like, share, comment, subscribe. Shoot me a message if you have any questions. There's some new channels coming up and some new websites where people have contacted me about helping out with them getting kind of started. And one of the things that I'm going to do is once their stuff is up, I'm going to do a video talking about everybody who's cropped up new websites and channels and things like that. So keep an eye out on that. Once they kind of get settled in and they've got stuff to share, I'm going to have a video that just talks about everybody who's got new stuff coming up. I also have a new project coming up that we haven't made complete headway on, but we're thinking we're going to do a South Houston gamers type, either like a YouTube online or streamed online, like a Google Hangout, or possibly a podcast. There's a couple people involved in that project, and we're just trying to work out what schedules and things like that are. And mostly it's been my fault for not having a solid schedule. So ideally, once I get everything sorted out, I'm going to have a whole slew of news for you guys and some stuff for you to pay attention to, just beyond normal channel stuff. All right, guys, as always, thanks for tuning in, watching, and I will see you guys at the gaming table.